All right, guys, we're live. And today we are going to be discussing my selection, which was Edmond. That's a 2005 film. The director is Stuart Gordon. The writer is David Mamet, based on a 1982 play by the same name. And I was introduced to this play by Seth Michael May, our very own. I had never even heard of it before, even though I'm a relatively recent diehard Mamet fan. And I read this play and I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind to pieces. Um, when I read it, I couldn't believe that a, a story like this was even possible. Um, and I'm sure many people, whether they love it or hate it, will have a similar reaction. Uh, it defied everything that I ever kind of like imagined about an narrative structure. And again, I guess it does sort of fall into the category of the sort of almost again like a Kafka-esque spiraling out of control, downward spiral, a spiral of self-destruction type of story, which I guess is somewhat of a classic narrative. But the way this was done is unlike anything I'd ever read before. And then when I was doing a little research after I had read this play, I came to find out that it's not a play that gets performed very frequently, but in my search for more information about this play and the sort of background and how it was written, what it was all about, I came to find out that they decided to make a movie out of it, which again, that I was like, I have to see this. And the film stars William H. Macy, Julia Stiles, Mena Suvari, and who else do we have in there that's
Denise
of note?
Richards.
Actually,
Denise Richards has a nice cameo, and Stuart Gordon, the director, is notorious for horror films and kind of like all over the place. Though he did Honey I Shrunk the Kids, correct?
No,
Yeah.
he did. He directed the
No.
TV show. I don't think he directed it. It's
Wait.
not.
All right, let's pull this up so that we don't get it wrong.
He did. I think it was called From Beyond and Reanimator.
No, he directed an episode of the television show.
What television show?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh yeah, that's right. So he directed Reanimator, and he was also the writer of Reanimator
and From Beyond, which are
classic. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He was the writer of.
That's the writer.
Yeah. So yeah, he was the writer of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which is okay. So
he wrote the story.
Yeah, he wrote this. He wrote the screenplay for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
And Robot Jocks.
Yeah, Robot Jocks. Oh, Body Snatchers. And then he also was the producer on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
That was a good one too.
There's something about the ants that's supposed to be even more shocking than this film.
The ants?
Something with ants in the title.
Oh yeah. That is King of the Ants.
King of the Ants.
He was the director and producer of it. Apparently, not the writer. So anyway, so David Mamet. I don't know, how familiar our audience is going to be with him, but David Mamet is kind of like he's a very much like an urban dramatist, and brings a lot of his, I think, obviously personal history to mix. He's like the son of an immigrant Jewish family. He grew up in Chicago. He's kind of like a blue collar Chicago version of Woody Allen. He writes, whereas like a guy like Woody Allen writes more about artsy, kind of like, your typical like artsy fartsy New York type people.
Jazz and relationships.
Yeah, relationships, whatever. Mamet is a little bit more preoccupied with like gritty type of characters, low lifes of every kind of low life. So blue collar low lifes, white collar low lifes, degenerate behavior.
The thing about Mamet that makes him distinct, I think, from Woody Allen is that each Mamet film has a theme. Like in Red Belt, it was jujitsu. And this one, Edmond, it was kind of like a Tyler Durden freedom ring type of theme that the character has, that he's breaking new molds. He did one called The Edge, which was all about survival, and it's just cool. He gets into a topic and then he explores, like even tarot, because there was a whole tarot card theme in this.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's
he's
like
also really
David
he's really
Mamet
into
found out
magic.
about tarot. Yeah.
Yes.
And he wrapped it in.
He was friends with the
Ricky Jay. And I was going to say, like, I plan to do House of Games with you guys at some point in the future, which was a highly critically acclaimed film that did not do well, but it was the first film that Mamet both directed and wrote. It was his first, I think it was his directorial film debut. And to me, I think it's one of the greatest films ever made, certainly in my top 5 80s films. And, it deals a lot with gambling and trickery and conning people. Yeah, and that's a theme. Like the con artist is a theme. A con artist, manipulator, lowlife is a theme that seems to be nearest and dearest to his heart. And he says that in his life, in his own personal experience, he dealt with a lot of those kinds of people. And so a lot of the Mamet speak, what they call Mamet speak, is style of dialogue, which is this rapid fire sort of rough around the edges, a lot of cursing, type of rapid fire, almost kind of staccato musical thing is like the type of language that he was familiar with the kind of people that he was hanging out with in Chicago.
He used to write to a metronome. He would actually type to a metronome. And I just wanted to add, it's probably major. There's 3 gangster films that were all, adopted or bought by different studios. And it was Untouchables. What was the other one? Lansky sat on a shelf at HBO for years until Sopranos came out and they wanted another gangster thing. And that was the first film that HBO did. And what is the other gangster film that he did?
What Mamet wrote?
Yeah, Mamet wrote 3 gangster films, and I'm blanking on, all around the same time.
Right.
About 3 real. It'll come to me later.
So, yeah, awesome, thanks. So, just to wrap up my little introduction here, Mamet seems to be really fascinated by cult leaders, con artists, and scumbags, and I share that fascination with him, for better and for worse. And I think it's a persistent theme in his films, and he wraps up the best of those archetypes in this film very well. If that's interesting to you, to do kind of like a deep psychological dive into that type of material, I highly recommend watching this very, very dark film. Read the play. It's a very quick read too. And, without further ado, we're going to spoil it now. So go watch it if you haven't already, and come and comment and tell us what you think.
Everywhere. This movie's free.
Yeah, yes. It's pretty easy to find for free.
It's free everywhere. And awesome. I didn't like it, and I'll tell it. But I get it, and it's cool. But one of the things that our viewers would like about this film, I think it's obscure, rare feature, is that William H. Macy is the protagonist and the antagonist at the same time. I think that's why people find this thing fascinating, because it's like Fight Club. It's like William H. Macy is Tyler Durden, and he has this whole new philosophy about living life to its fullest, and everything's bullshit, and we're just slaves. So let's get out there and wide line. Let's own up to who we are. And he goes out into the night in Chicago with that idea, and he goes from one thing to the other. And it just seems kind of funny.
Let me ask you, Sean, would you differentiate? Like, would you agree that Tyler Durden character, and even to maybe a lesser extent, the Edward Norton character, are also both protagonists and antagonists?
No, Edward Norton is the protagonist. Tyler Durden is the antagonist. Even though they were friends, that's fine. There's no rules against them not being friends. But in this one, it's both because he gets himself into trouble.
Okay,
And
I
that's
see
why
what
it's
you're
like this because I read about the play, and it's a 1-act play, 25 scenes and short scenes, it said. So they're probably about 2 to 3 pages a piece. And so that's how he gets in there. He gets in there. You can even see it with his wife, because he's like, I gotta go. I'm leaving you. Why? I've had enough. And then that's it. Because no, really, he got mesmerized by the number 115, and then he went to tarot, and this chick is like, you're not.
Yeah. So
alive.
let me sum up the sort of the 3 times that number comes up. So first, he's told he starts off with him leaving his office, and I guess his secretary is telling him, your appointment is no longer good for whatever time it was originally for. It's for 1:15 now, and she hands him a piece of paper that strangely just says the time 1:15 on it, which is like okay. And so he's carrying this piece of paper that says 1:15. He's leaving the office. He walks by a tarot, like a magic type of store with tarot kind of themes in the window. And then he glances up at fortune telling. Yeah, correct, Sean. Thank you. And then he glances up and he notices that the number of the building is 1:15.
The address, yeah.
The address of the building, the address of the storefront is 1:15. And he glances back at his paper as if to suggest, oh, this is some kind of sign, the setting that this guy's lost, and he's looking for some kind of sign to help him figure out what he needs to do to make the next move in his life, or whatever the case may be. And so he goes in and he does his tarot card reading, that sends him on his new kind of this whole new adventure that ends up happening. That precludes him leaving his wife in the next scene. And then finally at the very end, when he's sent to prison, his prison room number, his cell number is 1:15. So I don't know. Make of that what you will, but
I think it's just a loose theme, one way to make it thematic. So it's like, oh, it's all magical because the 1:15 shows up every time, which I guess
he also has a 3 of swords tattoo.
Oh yeah.
So
by the end of it, yeah.
Things appearing
3
times. Shakespeare and the Elizabethans believed that things that were said 3 times completed a spell.
Yeah.
Like if you sneeze 3 times in a row, you were a witch. Hamlet's father says, remember me, remember 3 times. So there's a lot of that.
So that last encounter with the number 1:15 is the 3rd time, and it seals his fate. And then it's beautiful. It's beautiful symbolism. And then you also have the tarot cards at multiple scenes throughout the film, kind of flashing by the screen, representing new. I guess, Seth, you could probably do a better job of that. You are here. Like this is your.
It's almost like in a Shakespeare play where they just have a sign and it says Verona, and then they switch it and it says Genoa, and you just accept that that's where you are.
Right.
So it's like, oh, the card's here, the Hierophant. That's where he is. And actually, I read tarot cards as a little side note in some seedy places on occasion. And
the best place for
it. I can say that this is probably the most accurate researched what tarot cards should be indicating of what scene that I can think of in a movie.
Okay, so that brings me to something that I wanted to ask you, Seth, and then I want to get back to Sean also because I want to understand why he didn't like it.
Okay.
But so how specifically did this film use tarot?
Okay, so the spread she does is called the Celtic Cross. If you want to get into the excuse me, the guilds of professional tarot card readers of like America or the International or however they go, like chess teams basically, or martial arts societies, you must know a certain number of spreads. The Celtic Cross is always required. It's one of the most classic spreads there is. It's not that easy. It's a couple cards, so you got to find a better mnemonic than going, where you are at the point of the reading, work, home, end of reading, result of reading. Like, that way you just remember beginning of reading, end of reading, and the word homework, and you switch it. So that's an easy 4-card spread. Or a 3-card spread is past, present, future. The Celtic Cross is a lot of cards, and some people really are into that it predicts things. I'm more into it on a Jungian level, which is synchronicities, which are in this film anyway. The 115 shows up a couple times. There's all the different types of female archetype, negative female archetype in the story. But it's pretty accurate. Usually, the death card means change, but if I remember correctly, he has the moon and the hangman right near them. Usually in movies, the death card means death because it's easy for the audience to remember, which it really doesn't. It actually means like rebirth. So if there's one card doesn't really mean something, it's more the story of the cards being next to each other and the reader and the readee, the one being read, working together, or some readers don't, they just don't let the other person talk and have amazing accuracy, putting it together. So, are you guys there? Did you guys just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I tried something making you the solo speaker.
No, it's a great shot because my mom and I are constantly...
you were getting so deep into it. I wanted to try this technique, which I haven't tried yet, which is to get you in the main shot.
And there are loads of decks. The deck that he's using is the Rider-Waite deck. It's a classic deck. It comes after the Tarot de Marseille. The Tarot de Marseille was the only cards that Andre Breton believed you could read. They only have the major arcana, the death card, the number of cards. The 21, I think there are, 0 to 21 cards, or 20. I think there's 22 cards, and then it just has like 5 sticks or 3 swords. And what the Rider-Waite did was it made it easier to learn because they got this artist who they didn't credit, who was a woman. So it really should be called the Rider-Waite. I believe her name was Smith. She was also mixed race and knew everybody.
And where was she from?
She was her parents came from Britain, if I believe correctly, to build the Jamaican Railway, and then they moved to America because they met so many railway advisors.
This was like the late 19th century.
She lived. She died right before World War II, and she was born at, like the end of the Victorian era,
right,
and kind of lived through the Edwardian period. And she knew everybody. She knew Aleister Crowley. She knew Yeats. She knew Houdini. She knew Arthur Conan Doyle. She knew everyone on both sides of the pond. And that's her deck. It's her drawings. She also did British propaganda posters for World War I. There's a Buy a Bulldog for Your Boys in the Army one that's like beautiful.
Very cool.
Something Ashton Smith. If you go into we'll post it. There's a great podcast on it that my friend is guests on all the time. Minds of Darkness, or I can't remember. I sent it to everybody kind of obsessively. I was so shocked by it. Anyway, so then there's loads of different decks. Aleister Crowley made his own deck with a female artist, which has 5 suits based off the Chinese numerology. And, you basically learn the cards and how they throw down. They alter each other and tell stories. There's a meaning of reverse cards. I don't think there are any.
It was Pamela Coleman Smith, correct?
Pamela Coleman Smith.
Yeah, Pamela Coleman Smith. Yeah, she
brings the spider goddess of Africa, which came to Jamaica, to prominence in a children's story.
Yeah, she's an incredible artist. It's kind of like that early, I guess she's got that kind of late 19th, early 20th century printmaking. What's that genre called? Arts and crafts, or
it is arts and crafts, right, Mom?
I think this is the third.
Arts and crafts in the 30s.
Yeah, so it's earlier than that. No, yeah. Well, this deck was created in 1909. And
Art Nouveau.
Art Nouveau. Yeah, that's what it is. Art Nouveau, correct. So pretty cool stuff. So Alice, tell us, what did you think of this film?
I actually liked it, but I thought when the wife says goodbye, is there anything that I can do for you? And he says no. I thought that was the ending. That should have been the ending. That was
right.
My feel. It was
so,
like somebody said, this movie isn't long enough, but it's some more.
So you felt that should be the ending. Let me ask you, did you feel that should have been the ending because it was the perfect place to end it, or because what happened afterwards was disturbing or overkill or unnecessary?
I thought what came after was unnecessary. The full spiral was down. He was finished. You knew that he was done, and there wasn't going to be anything to be resolved. And the rest seemed like a prison movie.
If you haven't gone on How to Survive in Prison websites, or looked at different guys that got out of prison running their suck on YouTube and telling stories, or read some of the biographies of people who actually went to prison and then were advisors or start on Oz. Most people don't want to know, or are in complete denial, what happens in the American penal system.
Oh yeah, thanks for mentioning Oz, Seth.
Yeah.
And this film came out pretty close to the time that Oz was quite popular. So if any of you are big fans of Oz and you've never seen this film, if you love Oz, you will probably love this film. If only for that, if for nothing else, for that last scene that Alice thought was the last several scenes that Alice feels was unnecessary, where there's some gratuitous. Well, it actually doesn't show it terribly graphically, but this guy's clearly being abused, and our main character, and sodomized by his cellmate, and then let's ruin the ending now. Basically, the way the film ends is with him not only resigned to his situation, which is that he's going to be living the rest of his life in a jail cell, ostensibly with his prison mate, who has basically made him his wife, so to speak. But he seems, by the last scene, they seem to be almost in a happy union together. They both are. It's gone from an abusive situation to what we might understand as a happy, reciprocal couple making the best of life, what life has thrown at them, which is what marriage is supposed to be. And I think that's kind of it's sort of a fascinating. I don't know exactly what he was trying to do with that, but and you know what, Alice might be right that it was overkill.
I'll add to that, if I may.
Sure.
It's also a moment where Mamet, from what I've read, it's extremely extremely rare for there to be an interracial couple in prison. Like you get with your race and they handle stuff.
Yeah.
And they have like,
that's a good point.
They have chiefs who like handle stuff in between each other, but like they all control a phone. Like I remember one guy. He was the guy who was the big guy who used to be Stallone's bodyguard on Oz. Italian guy. Was a leader in Hell's Angels and
Paul Zito.
Paul Zito. So Paul Zito in his book tells a story about a little Jewish guy who wanted to use the phone. And there was a long line and they kept cutting him on line. And Zito finally got fed up and beat the guy who was like basically responsible for keeping the game going in front of this Jewish guy, unconscious. He then knew that he had crossed lines and he was gonna prepare for a serious beatdown. So
wait. Who was the guy? Start over again. I lost it.
Okay. A little Jewish guy in prison when Paul Zito was actually in prison, wanted to use the payphone.
And people kept on cutting him online, but who beat who up?
Okay. Paul Zito beat up the guy who was basically running the game and saying, yeah, it was funny, keep on doing it. Like who's the dominant male.
Okay, so Paul Zito beat up the guy who told other inmates you could keep on cutting this Jewish guy.
Yeah, so then Paul Zito knew what was going to happen, and he went to the gym to lift the heaviest weights possible so that whoever came in would see how much he was lifting and be hesitant. When a guy came in to challenge him, Zito dropped the weights on the bar, I guess on one side, and then swung it into the guy's head. And after that, everybody wanted to be friends with Paul Zito because that's how prison works.
Right. Yeah. In a nutshell, that's the sort of kind of like most generic base level of prison politics, which is that don't be a pussy and don't act weak. That's always been true, and that will always be true. Now, I mean, when we get into the details, I don't want to get too much into it, like the accuracies and inaccuracies, but in this day and age, and this may change based on, I mean, I have a lot of people who work. I have a client who works in one of the worst prisons in New York she's done corrections officer work. She does administrative work now. She's done it all. I have a friend who worked in the investigative journal wing, the Marshall Project, which is basically entirely investigative journalism. Now she works for NBC and researches, all levels of abuse that take place in these types of environments. And the reality is that the sort of like willy-nilly sexual abuse and beatdowns of your average prisoner that, it's not how it used to be. Prisoners in the most dangerous prisoners don't shack up with other prisoners. They don't have, high security prisons don't put prisoners in cells together. They all have their own cells for the most part. And again, there's differences between federal prison and state prison and so on and so forth. But but overall, if you show weakness, it's not a good thing for you. But going back to the original theme that got us off on this whole thread, there's a theme from the beginning to the end in this film about about race relations, particularly relationships between black and white, white collar and blue collar. But there is this constant theme and tension. I mean, this is a guy who got scammed. He got conned by some 3-card Monte guys, black guys on the street. Then he was getting scammed by a pimp, but then he actually turned around and beat the pimp up. And so they
racial slurs.
while yelling racial slurs. The racial slurs begin with his chance meeting with a random guy in a bar played by what's his name?
Joe Mantegna.
Joe Mantegna, another fantastic ensemble actor who's in a lot of Mamet films.
Is it the
They start with their whole like N-word racist conversation. So on one level, there's an exploration.
Sorry,
Whose is that?
That's my dumb phone. Sorry.
All right, let's mute that.
Sorry,
Please.
man. New phone. We mute it. Okay.
All right. So thank you. And yeah, so basically you have themes of racial tension going on throughout the entire film, and it's not so much like there's some level that he's like, and I think part of the reason this takes place is that this film is somewhat about justice or about cause and effect or about, what you deserve to get based on the behaviors what you should expect, the kinds of things you might expect to happen to you based on your behaviors. So I think to sort of address Alice's objection, I think part of the reason that scene was so important, at least to the writers and the filmmakers involved, was that it explained the sort of karma that it was a karmic kind of finale, which is that here's a guy who, he doesn't get beaten to death by a black guy, and he doesn't deserve that. But he's a guy who, kind of gets put in place by a black prison mate. And not only is it's sort of some kind of karma, but in some level, it's what he wants. And he says so much in his monologue, which is probably one of the most powerful monologues or even like dialogues of the whole.
His ending
film.
monologue where his head was shaved?
I don't remember if it was before the head was shaved or after, but where he starts talking about how people get when people fear something, it's actually there's a wish behind it.
Oh, that's when he first.
So he fears getting
his cellmate.
That was probably when he first met him. Yeah, that there's a fear behind. There's a wish behind it, a desire behind it, which builds into the first sort of assault that he experiences. So I don't know. I think there's something there.
I think also thematically, he keeps saying that's too much, and it's almost like
he haggles with the sex workers.
Yes,
which is
but
amazing.
The thing he keeps saying is that's too much, and there's always a sense of he's creating chaos, although he desires order.
Right.
And I think that by the end of the movie, it's too much. Like, I didn't need to see that. We've kind of flipped because the sexual tension between men and women is also consistent through the entire way. And also what's kind of freaky about that is when you hear people go off the rails, until the FBI puts it together, or the media or some books come out, it really doesn't make any sense. It like in the movies, it kind of makes sense. When you write a story, it makes sense. But when it comes for you, like, you don't know that this guy is the same guy who did it down the street. Like it's just seems like chaos.
Yeah.
So I think that's a theme too. But yeah,
something else just jumped out at me. It seems like this is a film that it's just one miscommunication or failure to communicate after another. First with his wife, he can't seem to get that's the reason for the break. They're not. It's like they're living in different worlds, right?
If I may,
and
that's David Mamet's real wife.
Yeah, Rebecca Pigeon, yes, is playing the role of William H. Macy.
He wrote it.
What?
But not at the time he wrote the play.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so to explain this to the audience, Mamet wrote this play in 1982 when he was married to Lindsay Krause. He had divorced Lindsay Krause, I believe, sometime in the 90s, and he was remarried. He was already remarried to Rebecca Pigeon, who's another actress. and he's still married to her to this day. And this film was made in 2005, and Rebecca Pigeon plays the wife of the protagonist or antagonist, if you will, in this film. And she just has that scene in the beginning where he breaks it off with her. But so what I was going to say is that it's one scene about miscommunication after the other. He can't seem to like. It's not just that he's not. It's that he can't seem to get what he wants, and the other person on the other side isn't getting what they want. And there's just this disconnect. And the only people that he seems to have an authentic connection with in the entire film is Joe Mantegna, who's going off on the racist rant early on in the beginning of his adventure or misadventure, and his cellmate, who is a black man who makes him his wife at the end of the film. Those are the only places where there's some sort of a connection, and everywhere else it's just disconnect. That's I don't know how intentional that was, but it's kind of interesting.
It was intentional. David Mamet.
Mamet's a big time architect.
Yeah, for
Did
sure.
anyone look up what Edmond, the origin of the word Edmond is, or what it means? Because I know it's
no, I didn't look into that at all.
I know it's in King Lear, and it's in. I think it's in.
You're saying the reason that he chose that name?
Yeah, well, the reason why he chose that name.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to look at that.
Someone wants to grab their.
Well, actually, I'll look it up because I want to go back to Sean, and I want to give him the floor again and ask him why did you not like it? I mean,
it's Mamet. He works when he writes things. I've heard him in an interview. He says he works with 3 rules. It's who wants what happens if they don't get it, and why now. So if you answer all those 3 questions in your writing, it's going to go pretty well. And his whole motivation is just how do you get there.
Are you saying you object to that methodology?
No, I'm just saying that it's just that this story is just his technique, obviously, without any craft. It was just of course it's miscommunication, because when you have 2-page, 3-page scenes, it's just easier if they just don't listen to each other.
Are you saying that you think that this is sort of like his technical craft without the humanity behind it?
No, I think it's
what's the objection? Because you're saying that he did a good job of executing.
No, I'm just saying that it's just so
craft.
Bare. It's just so bare, and I guess it was in his early career.
Very early play.
He knew he could do short scenes. He knew he could do that with just obvious things, and you let the actors fill in the subtext when they just say things like "I've had enough," and somehow the wife is supposed to know what that means. When I had a husband this morning, and now in the evening he's leaving. So there's that, and then when he haggles with the sex workers, which is ridiculous. You don't haggle with a sex worker. What does he think he's doing?
Really?
No, you don't.
Really?
No.
Have you ever gone to some meetings, Sean, or is this you putting up your poker chips again?
No.
Dude,
Here's the thing. No.
Yeah, I'm gonna
stop. No, because if you haggle with a sex worker, why do you want to haggle with a sex worker? I just don't get it. That's the one thing you don't too much. It's how much? It's $30. That's what he negotiated with Mena
Jerry
Suvari.
Springer.
$40.
Jerry Springer was well known to haggle with sex workers. He wrote a check that bounced, and that's how he lost his. Maybe you don't want to believe it in your world that you
listen. People actually here's the thing. A lot of people have criticized. I mean, that chick that you sent me her reaction to this video, Seth. She was criticizing the same. She was making the same critique. I don't think that's true. I mean, sex workers haggle for a living. Strippers. I mean, it's just the reality of it. Yeah, it is. Whatever. But I don't understand how that. To me, I don't buy that. That's a point of objection for you. I'm still not buying it. I think what you don't like.
It's too much.
I think what you don't like is the theme that I see with you, Sean, is that you tend to not like films that are too surreal for you. That where it's that wouldn't happen like that in real life. And it touches some sort of nerve with you. Like, I get it. Yeah, the scene with his wife is jarring and it's strange, and no breakups don't happen like that. And a lot of the interactions are peculiar. Is that really why you don't like it? I don't.
No. Let me finish. Also,
Yeah, I want to go back to you, but when you bring up things that don't make sense to me, I have to bring that up. The haggling thing, that's, to me,
Yeah.
I don't buy it. That's why you don't like the film. So, let's continue.
It's just so cheap to me. It's just cheap, and also,
How's it cheap?
Well, he is cheap. That's what the point is.
No,
That's why he's hacked.
No, that he's saying the
David
film,
Mamet.
Seth. He's saying the filmmaking or the story writing. What's cheap? What don't you like?
Because it was
What
what's
makes
the
this
only thing they could argue about is money. So they're going to argue about because they had the same scene 3 times. That's too much. That's too much. And then another girl, and that's too much. That's what the problem is. He's so deep going off on these monologues, but when he's talking with a sex worker and there's 3 of them, he just that's too much. That's it. That when he finally gets with Julia Stiles, he gets philosophical with her, but with Mena Suvari, that that's too much. Like, what do you want her to do? $30 to have sex with you? It's like come on. It's just, to me, it's cheap. 2, the whole thing with this, I think from the play, it started out as written in a way where David Mamet knew he had a certain technique and he was good at it. That's what's with the short scenes. And then, but if you could do a narrative device where you make the protagonist and the antagonist the same thing, because even watching this, I was like, William H. Macy is getting kind of whiny. He kind of sounds like this to me.
I think I understand what's happening here.
We know what.
I think I get it, guys.
Props.
Oh, you're not done yet, Sean. Continue.
No, and then in the end,
Sean.
you see this guy become violent with racial slurs, and then he kills that poor girl after saying, if you don't get paid as an actor, that means you're not really an actor, which is like the most dickhead thing to say to somebody, especially after you had sex with him. And he had the knife the whole time. He's like, yeah, do something with your acting class. Yeah, boo, boo. And she's like, get out of here. And he's like, well, you're not facing the truth. Ugh! And he kills her. All right, fine. So, but at that point, you don't even like this guy, but you're watching him go through this thing, and then he becomes somebody's wife in the end. And as an audience member, you're like, good. Because even in the stage play, and Kenneth Branagh did this play in England in like 2010. They did this whole thing, and it's staged where you see the guy get forced on his knees and then like suck a dick. You see that on stage. He doesn't really suck a dick, but you see that on stage. And it's in theater, people think that's deep, of just like, I'm going to use racial slurs, some nudity, and then rape.
But they didn't do that in this.
And then you're
they didn't have that in this.
You're like, it's so deep. What does he mean by all this? He doesn't mean anything. He's just like, where can I put in numbers? 115 here and here and here. Great. And then we'll play up the violin music when he sees 115, and it's supposed to mean something.
Well, I don't have a. Hang on, Seth. You can go in a second. I don't have really any personal like investment in whether Sean likes it or not. So I'm not even going to respond. I think everything that Sean said is fair criticism. And just because you have reasons why, whatever, that's fine. I don't even have a response. I like all the things that he doesn't like about it. I like about it. I think that it's entertaining at the very least. But it's an interesting film about psychopathy to me. And I think, I don't know if it's trying to be a cautionary tale or if it's as deep as I don't even think it's necessarily a deep film. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but it's definitely eminently entertaining to me. Was it not entertaining to you, Sean?
No, I had a pause, and like when he was in his monologues. Okay, like I dig William H. Macy. He's not the best actor. I even heard him in
What?
No, he's not.
What?
Okay.
He's not. I don't.
He's
care.
not really.
No, he's not. I loved Fargo, and I guess his show Shameless is a huge hit and good for him. But I even heard him in an interview in an Actors Round Table. He said this. as an actor, I didn't work for 5 years, 3 times. And I'm thinking, that's 15 years you didn't work total, and you were an actor. And to me, it's not like he wasn't trying.
Wait, but
It's
I
not like
just
he
thought
was
you
tired.
said that if you're not getting paid to act, you're still an actor. Just a second ago, you said that.
Well,
That's
no,
a dick
I'm
thing to
saying
say.
That's kind of rude to say.
That's
to
kind of a
somebody.
well. You're doing it right now.
No,
That's
I'm
kind
not.
of a
No, I'm
rude.
not.
No, that's
No,
rude.
I'm
You're
saying-
saying
no,
he
that's
didn't
my
work for
evidence.
years, so he's not a good actor.
That's my evidence.
I'm
He's
just
not a good
fucking
actor.
with you, Sean. All right.
right.
Okay.
That's
Duly
my
noted.
evidence.
All right,
He
Seth.
said that, and I'm like, wait a second, because I saw him in The Last Dragon in 1985 with Bruce Leroy. He had like 2 scenes, and I'm like, William H. Macy and Chaz Palminteri. He's in that movie too as one of the henchmen. He has a mustache. But then I'm thinking, it's like, yeah, he hasn't really done much.
Okay.
Even in House of Games, he had 1 scene.
That's
Dude,
true.
He's
Okay,
a
Seth.
he's
All
a
right.
ring
Thank
head.
you, Sean. Hang on. Sean, thank you. I appreciate that your take on that actually.
Thank you, Abram.
Seth, I want to hear just your like closing remarks, and I want to hear again from Alice if she's got anything more to say, and then I want to introduce next week's film because we're kind of going over at this point. But
Got it.
Seth, what do you have to say about Sean's take?
I'll say what Edward Albee would say.
It's pronounced all.
You know, the guy from Cheers is really good in this movie. I really liked him. What is that, Norm or Cliffy? Who's the Russian pawnbroker?
It was Norm, played by George Wendt.
Is it?
It's George Wendt.
Okay, interesting.
With
They
a
were
beard
friends,
and a Russian
and
accent.
George Wendt, they knew each other.
It shows you how subtly, with some facial hair and an accent,
And an accent.
you
Yeah.
can do stuff. It's pretty amazing.
No, it was cool. Yeah.
There's a lot of Chicago actors in here. They tend to be very loyal to each other. I think Sean's right that he's not likable. He's not likable, and he is shallow. And I suspect that, like a lot of playwrights, a lot of these scenes were written one at a time and showcased week after week with his friends, and parts were written for them, and that's why the scenes are so short and repetitive. But I don't have a problem with that because his intensity of being fucked over more and more is like a nightmare. And the director, this was the right director for this, because I was thinking, is this 1983? Because the prices are definitely 1983.
Yeah.
And the advice of cashing a check at a restaurant
At a restaurant.
is you can't do that anywhere. I mean, Truman Capote said the only thing good about being famous is you can cash a check in a small town. And no one in New York City will take a personal check anywhere in a restaurant. So anyway, and she said, when were ATMs invented? I remember an episode of Alice, the sitcom, where the ATM malfunctions and Mel thinks he struck the lottery because it just keeps shooting out, and stuff like that had happened. That was in like, I think one of my friends complained about another friend the year he graduated in 1988. He went to college and he was talking to the older friend, and he said to Drew, I was really worried about money, but then my father said he was going to give me something called a Mac card. And that was 1980. That was 1990. So when she refers to an ATM, there are not that many ATMs. I think that people didn't like it who liked the play, who were the majority of people who were going to like it. I mean, it's amazing that this movie got made.
Yeah, agreed.
Movies like this don't make money.
Of course, Sean, you have to admit it's amazing that it got made because it did horribly, and everybody should have known that it would do horribly. Because what kind of an audience is there for a film? That's what he means when he says it's amazing this got made.
The reason that its fan base, I think, didn't like it is because if you're going to shoot it, period, it would look like Taxi Driver and Midnight Cowboy. But this director shoots it like a horror movie, and it is a horror movie. It's a nightmare. And this guy mainly directs Lovecraftian horror.
And that's why I think this movie, that's what I think makes this movie great. If it had been done as some kind of artsy, fartsy, like 70s style, like, Scorsese type of like Taxi Driver kind of film, it would have been lame. But the fact that it's done almost like a weirdo thriller slasher film makes it work for me. That's why I like it, because it is just a sick, twisted. That's how I read this film. It's a sick, twisted horror movie. And I like how incongruent that is for a guy like David Mamet, because he's not a horror writer. And that's the thing about this movie that really hits me in a way that where I'm like, this is an awesome, almost accident that happened. Because Sean, if this is just framed to you as like a dumb horror movie, then it's good. It's good as a dumb horror movie.
I guess.
But you're trying to get all highfalutin of like analyze, I don't really see it that way. It is kind of just a dumb. I agree with you. It's not deep. It's just kind of just a dumb horror movie at the end of the day, and I think it's really well done for what it is. But at any rate, I appreciate everybody's dissenting.
Can I say one thing, because I shared this story with you, and I'm the acting coach.
And then we have to let Alice give closing remarks.
Closing remarks. So my mother has sat in a few acting classes, and I begged her to see Milton Gonzalez, and she was not at all impressed by his the way he treated his students, his lack of empathy, and his braggadocio about coming off cruel that day. And anyway, Milton, when I had met him the year before, said, "Why? What do you want to do?" To a kid who looked like a sensitive kid who wanted to prove something. And he goes, "I'm doing a monologue from Edmond." And Gonzalez goes, "Yeah, you're safe. You want to kill everybody."
Yeah, you told me that story.
And Abram and I have very different interpretations of what was going on. Whether Milton was like, "Oh, I see what you're good doing, and you're going to stretch your range," or whether he was going to just back down, angry guy, like give some agents some cream puffs, which he always said, and do something nice for somebody else. You'll get a job. Stop. He always did, but you had a different interpretation. I don't
remember.
I think you thought like it was someone who knew himself and knew that he couldn't play Edmond, and he wanted to stretch into an angry middle-aged man when he was
maybe I think what I was thinking is that the acting teacher Milton Gonzalez was probably thinking like, yeah, the reason you want to do this is not for the right reason. You're doing this to go to like indulge in your rage, and that's not what this is about. I don't know, but what do I know? I wasn't there.
It's a great play for acting classes because the scenes are really short.
Yeah,
and there's a variety of partnerships.
Right.
You can change the racial slurs if you want. There's accents.
And for what it's worth, I think it's fair that we went as long as we did today because this is definitely a shocking movie. And before we go to Sean to tell us about if he has closing remarks and to tell us about his selection for next week, I just wanted to ask Alice, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, it was a pleasure being with you, and it was interesting to listen to your
Oh,
comments.
thank you. It was.
Mom, how many podcasts have you listened to? None.
No, that's not true.
You listened to mine.
Hey, don't feel bad. Nobody listens to these podcasts.
I'm congratulating her for like stepping up. And
oh yeah, she's actually participating now. She sees what goes into it. That's great. Yeah. We'll bring my mom on one of these days.
There's a.
I want to do a
like true crime.
We'll do have a mom session. Why not?
Alice, do you like true crime? Because I got some recommendations. If you like true crime.
True crime. like In Cold Blood.
Oh, I love Pink.
You do? Okay, I'll send you some podcasts that you could listen to that are true crime. Now, for my closing arguments,
I think all moms like true crime. By the way, Sean. So
Because they
send them
cause
my
it.
way too. I'll send them to my mom.
Because they cause it. It's been proven.
All
Feel powerful. The FBI figured it out every time.
right, Sean.
Okay, so my closing arguments is that if you're writing a play and you put gay sex in there, people are going to think you're political and that it's deep, even though you as the writer don't mean anything but by it. If people go to the theater, they think if there's gay sex somehow it's an important piece. That's just what they think. So that's a fact. So there's that also. Also, I didn't like the movie.
It might be true, but I don't think it's about that.
Yeah, great. But next week's selection, and I did a lot of preparation already for this film. It's 1989's Dream a Little Dream. I'm really excited about this film. It got 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is the lowest scoring film of this series. But I did watch the opening crawl of the film like a month ago because it was free on Tubi. Go Tubi, and I was getting into the Coreys. I kind of like the Coreys as a concept. I did a lot of research into the Coreys. I'll tell you that. And I saw the opening crawl of Dream a Little Dream, and I'm like, I got to save this for the podcast. I'm saving it because it's so rich in corniness and cheese, and it's so fun. And it's not even a movie. Like it has no bearing on reality of the time, but it's flair and its style. And Jason Robards is in it, and he's a good actor. Just for his own performance. I don't know, he's not in it that much, but he is in it. And I watched both seasons of the two Coreys, which is a reality show that came out in 07, 08. I saw both seasons of that. And Dream a Little Dream had a really low budget, crappy sequel in 1995 called Dream a Little Dream 2. I saw that in preparation for this. I also saw the last two Coreys film which is another really low budget film. I could only find the Spanish version. I watched parts of that. So I'm really excited. And Alice, I think you'd like this film as well.
Oh, there's a connection between Dream a Little Dream and Edmond.
Oh, Christ.
Charlie Sheen. Because Denise Richards, and through the theory of the 80s, who you sleep with.
Okay, so that's another tenuous connection. Okay. Great.
Because Sheen raped Corey Haim. It's a shame what happened to Corey Haim. Did you know that in 96... Let's save it for now. All right.
And he negotiated
price. We've had enough heavy sexual abuse for one episode with, Seth's mom here with us. We don't need to get into that.
It's cool. She liked Al Goldstein. Anyway,
really?
If Heidi Fleiss is listening, could you type in because we want to prove or be disproved of the negotiation thing.
Okay. Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, guys. Awesome. So next week, Dream a Little Dream, and thanks for watching with us. And click subscribe and like the video and comment, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Good job.